cool.
We've got some quizzes coming up throughout the show. So you've got some Rhythm and Pixel stickers to give out.
We have some stickers to give away. I have a first generation Sega Genesis signed by the Angry Video Game Nerd that I'd like to share with somebody. So we're gonna have some goofy, technical, nerdy questions about some of the hardware, about some of the music. And
I haven't seen the questions. I'm looking forward to those.
Yeah, and then I have hard mode questions for Ed and for Cam, and we can make fun of them.
Sweet.
Yeah.
I can't wait to have it metal tested.
It's going to be pretty swift. Ed is going to answer that pretty quickly. But yeah, we're going to listen to some great music, and we're going to joke about it. And when Pernell arrives, it's going to be even better, even sweeter.
I think someone's got it out in the hallway.
Yeah.
That's what it sounds like.
I think he fell down on a curb.
Scars on the other side.
Right.
Yeah. We combined together.
You turn into like the Power Twins.
The Power Twins, right. Alright, so what is your favorite NES soundtrack that you remember the most?
Silver Surfer.
Silver Surfer.
Tim Follin, very nice.
That's right.
One of my favorite composers.
Blaster Master.
Blaster Master.
Kodaka.
Kodaka.
I want to change my answer, Mr. Gimmick.
Mr. Gimmick. Yeah, that's my favorite. The reason I started getting involved in listening to music over an MP3 that people can download over in iTunes. So that's about it.
Anyone else want to share their favorite video game soundtracks?
Trying to fill time here as best we can. We're going to listen to some great music, honestly. But alrighty.
Let me see if he's out there, Tom. Like literally wrangle him back. There he is, Pernell, everyone.
Pernell, everybody. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next year.
All right, good night, keep your waiting. Hope you enjoyed the music.
Pernell, can you start the head spin for us? You can't stop until the end of the show.
I know my neck is in position.
All right. Good stuff.
Let's get the show on the road.
We're all sitting down.
All right, so this is going to be taped as a podcast for my VGM podcast, the VGMbassy. We'll have some details about how to access that show as we go through the show. We've got some nifty slides set up for everybody. So everybody welcome, and thank you for tuning into the Retroworld Expo 2018 VGM Rhythm and Pixels versus the VGMbassy.
Yeah, less of a
podcast.
Competition, more of a friendly throwdown.
Yeah, Rhythm and Pixels cross. VGMbassy. Today's theme is VGM East meets West. West meets the West.
That's quite the undertaking.
Yeah, so we're going to go over a little bit over the four major video game consoles that are out there, explain a little bit about their sound chips and how they create the music that they do, and then play examples of like a Japanese composer and a Western composer, so like either UK or English.
I mean, the two different sides of the world really approach to the system in completely different ways with the exact same tools, with the exact same instruments, and we really want to take a look at what makes them different and what we like about both of them, to be honest.
So our goal today is to learn about some sound chips, to listen to some rad tunes, and to win some neat stuff.
Yeah, so we're gonna have some quizzes to call out to the crowd. So if anyone just wants to raise their hand or jump up or just grab Pernell and just throw him on the ground and sit on him and be like, I know the answer. We can do that.
I didn't sign up for abuse, man. I signed up for some rag tunes.
That's all right. But we have some stuff to give away. We got some fun stickers. I have a Sega Genesis signed by the Angry Video Game Nerd that we're going to be giving away. So that's some cool stuff. But really, it's just for fun. A job well done. That's what we're looking for.
Exactly. So just a little introduction to us as panelists. My name is Ed Wilson. I run a video game music podcast called The VGMbassy, in which I take the role of the VG ambassador. Or actually the prime VGM minister, and have VG ambassadors on my show. So I'll have a different guest on every single episode, and they'll share with me and the audience their favorite video game music, the themes that they're into, lots of really cool stuff. Cam Werme is here with me today as my VG ambassador. He's been a frequent guest on my older video game music podcast, Bitchin' Tunes Radio. And so we are very lucky to have him here. He's got a great taste in music and has some awesome picks for us today.
Thanks for the invitation.
Absolutely. And next up is Rob and Pernell from Rhythm and Pixels.
With the best picture you can find of us. Thank you. Yeah, my name is Rob Nichols.
And I'm Pernell.
And we host the weekly video game music podcast, Rhythm and Pixels.
It's heavily based around like music that covers a number of scapes, including
Number of what?
scapes, like the
Scapes.
past, the present,
Yes.
sometimes the future if we get that level of clairvoyance. And for the most part, it's just listen to good jams, talking up, just gaming experience, gaming technology in regards to the music. And every once in a while, we get some pretty quality guests on to kind of have some conversations.
We've had some wonderful guests like the artist Tu Mello, who recently worked on Celeste. We've had Amanda Lepre from the Descendants of Erdrick. We've had the lead singer from the Megas. So if you tune in, there's a lot of good, different perspectives on the music and on the games.
And also just a good time.
Good times.
Sometimes you might even hear me on that show.
Yes. You're okay.
I try. I do my best. So, what is a sound chip? And according to Wikipedia,
What is a sound chip, Dad?
It's an integrated circuit, i.e. a chip designed to produce sound. It might do this through digital, analog, or mixed mode electronics. Sound chips normally contain things like oscillators, envelope controllers, samplers, filters, and amplifiers. And during the late 20th century, sound chips were widely used in arcade game system boards, video game consoles, home computers, and PC sound cards. Now, we're not going to get into all the really complicated stuff like the filters and the amplifiers and stuff. Basically, what we're going to do is kind of give you a brief overview of all the sound channels that are included, because those are what's kind of really important to the listeners.
Right. Yeah, we could go we could do like a whole hour, 2 hours just on FM synthesis, but we're just going to focus on the composers and what they're able to do with the instruments.
Exactly. So, do you want to take the NES sound chip?
Yeah, let's start off with the NES sound chip. We have 5 sound channels coming out of this chip. Primarily, you got 2 pulse waves, 2 square waves that have duty cycles. I said duty, and that can change the shape of that sound to an extent. You have a triangle wave, because this is an 8-bit sound chip. You can't do a full sine wave. So a triangle wave is about as close as you're going to get to a bass sound. We also have a noise channel, which is just random white noise used for percussive elements, used for sound effects. And then you have a sample channel that's going to be
Plates of steel.
yeah, Birds of Steel and Bayou Billy and all that. But it's 2-bit, like it's 2-bit sound downsampled and then played through a pulse wave modulation.
So based on the joke you guys
Through
just
its
made, would you say that's pretty much where we would get the majority of those muffled voice samples
Yes,
that we do in our games?
Every one of them, yeah.
Yeah,
Every one of them.
The Sunsoft bass, the Konami drum hits, they're all through that
Yeah,
sample
you
channel.
hear like the oh yeah from like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So used rhythmically and used musically. Yes.
So that would be the predecessor, like the PCM channel, like the voice samples.
Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely. That's pulse code modulation. Same thing.
All right, so we're going to get into our first track.
Yeah, that's the nerdy stuff. Let's listen to some cool tunes. Ed.
That's what I'm in for.
All right, so first up is a pretty good example of what I feel a Western composer would do with the NES sound chip. This is Name Entry from Quattro Sports BMX Simulator, and this is composed by Gavin Rayburn.
All right, let's hit this one up. Volume. Should be good.
So you hear those little arpeggios. That's very indicative of a Western composer that came along from like Spectrum, the ZX Spectrum, Commodore 64. They used that technique to kind of make a little bit of a chord. They didn't have enough sound channels to work with. Really prevalent right here. And that very bouncy beat, very European.
Yeah, very rhythmically focused. So, Han, what do you think of this one?
I think another thing that's sort of indicative of the Western composers is that deeper bass. A lot of times with the Western composers, they try to simulate the bass instruments, like the bass guitar, or like even like a deep brass or something like that. They make it a really deep kind of low end. Whereas with the Eastern, we'll get there, but they go kind of all over the place with the bass lines. That's something I really noticed.
Yeah, exactly. All right, want to move on to Japanese?
Yeah, so this is a good example of a Western composer on the NES sound chip. Now we're going on to some, we're going all Konami up in here, right? This is a Roller Games Zone 3 automobile processing. Do we know the composer on this one?
Yes, sir.
Ed.
As soon as I get there.
Ed didn't compose this. What are you talking about?
So this is stage theme 3, composed by Atsushi Fujio. Thank you.
I especially like the idea behind this track because it is a Japanese composer composing a track meant to give you a decent environmental feel for a Western property.
Yes, yeah.
So this Roller Games was originally like a old 80s like TV, like soap opera of sorts for rollerblading.
I just hear Ninja Turtles.
Yeah, mostly, yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean Ultra Games, man.
And this part. Yeah, it's Ultra, not Konami.
So one thing to really pick out is that the lead synth here is clean, just a clean pulse wave. And then all of the percussion, most of the percussion is being done by that sample channel.
Yeah.
So
Right.
rather than like modulating the pulse wave, kind of like blinky, arpeggiated sound to the Western side, they're going all out, just really pure melody on this one.
This sounds great.
That's good. This is a groove.
That little breakdown right there. So good.
Yeah, I like this is like breathing in.
That's one square in the triangle.
That's all you need, man. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then right here,
All right.
at the end of the note, it kind of changes sound. That's the duty cycle changing at the end of the note.
Oh, right.
You said dirty.
I did.
All right, want to move on to the...
Yeah, all right, so let's turn this track down a little bit.
All right.
We'll get to some questions here. All right, so the first question, and we'll get the first show of hands here. What other home consoles and computer systems use similar audio processing units, sound generators, similar to the NES? So I'm looking for 2 others, similar to this one.
Like a wavetable chip.
Yeah. PC Engine, that was a wavetable synthesis. Can I get one more? I'm going to refer to...
That was an FM chip. So
FM
not
synthesis.
the same.
Looking for one more. Yes, you in the yellow.
Sega Master?
Yes,
There
the
you go.
Sega Master System. Thank you, sir.
Nice.
Can you give me one more? You win a sticker, yes. We're looking for stuff like the Commodore 64 that has like extra pulse waves and stuff like that.
Yeah. So anyone that has answered correctly, so you two guys can come up and... You want to come down?
Yeah.
Rob's
may as
going to go
well.
ahead and out your stickers.
Go on down.
You may as well throw the Game Gear in there too. Same chip, right?
Game Gear and the Sega Master System both use the same sound chip. You are correct, sir. Don't trip on your way back up.
Okay, I better stop. Rubber on the other side.
Oh, that would not be good.
All right, we got next.
All right, so next up is the YM2612, the infamous FM chip found in the Sega Genesis, Sega Master System. This had 6 FM voices, so that's twice as many as the 3 sound channels that you would find in the NES. And 4 operators per channel. An operator is basically how you can manipulate those different FM frequencies on those channels, which basically makes the instruments on an FM chip. It includes stereo output, which obviously the NES did not have, and 1 digital audio channel for playing sampled audio, which I guess depending on how it was used could be better or worse than the NES. Sometimes it sounds pretty crappy.
Definitely. This was not designed like the Super Nintendo or even the Amiga to be just strictly sampled playback. This was pure, just FM synthesis coming out of the system.
Right, so which is why you get like, let's kick shell, and all those really bad samples you find.
But you know what? They went for it. So I think we're going to have some good examples of that with the Western composers.
Yes. And so speaking of the Sega Master System, the FM chip was accompanied by what's commonly known nowadays as the Sega PSG, the Texas Instruments SN76489, which is a 3-channel PSG chip, 3 square waves and 1 noise channel. So the Master System, as you might know, was backward compatible with Sega Master System games. That Sega PSG chip was included in the Genesis for backward compatibility, but developers could also use it in conjunction with the FM chip. So they got 3 extra PSG channels along with all that FM stuff. And
Yeah, you can
lots of
imagine
composers would
like
use that.
Sonic the Hedgehog. We have like arpeggiations and pads going in the background using the PSG, but then all of the melodies and all the percussion getting hit with the FM synth chip. And the combination of the two sounds super cool.
Exactly, exactly. So, let's play a track from that. I think this is one of your picks, Rob, right?
Yeah, that's right. This is from NBA Live 1996. This is the title theme, and this is a again Western composers Traz Damji, Steve Roya, and Vince Mai, and we're going to hear a lot of sampled sounds coming out of the Sega Genesis on this one.
This one's a straight jam.
So Electronic Arts on the Sega Genesis, a lot of they took a lot of British talent and brought them over to the States.
Sounds like something you might hear at the after party tonight.
I hope so.
I forgot my glow sticks. I was going to do a little. Pernell was going to do the head spin.
I don't still know what you got to tell. Until you mentioned headspin, I think The Exorcist, and my neck wasn't built for that, so
You got any pea soup on you?
I guess so. So we'll be to the period soon if I have to do this headspin bit.
So this is mainly using that FM chip for the bass, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because this is an FM. Like this chip was designed for like Yamaha DX keyboards. You're gonna get pure low pure tones.
And all that sample percussion.
The bass is like right out of like 80s pop. That bass sound is very. That's what I think of when I think of FM.
Yeah, I think of like Paula Abdul.
Yeah.
MC Scat Cat.
Gotta bring out my boyfriend MC Scat Cat up to this. But yeah, really rhythmically focused. Back in the time when sports games would actually have music playing.
Yeah, it makes me regret that they kind of turned away from that and went more towards licensed tracks because I wasn't much of a sports game guy, but when I was exposed to them regularly, these were the jams that made me at least feel okay with my friends playing.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, so let's move on to our Japanese selection. Rob, this is also
Yes, these are the jams you've
yours.
been looking for. This is Glay Lancer for the Sega Genesis, Stage 6, The Twin Sunset by Masanori Hikichi, Noriyuki Iwadare, Yoshiaki Kubatara, and Isayo Mizoguchi. They all work together, maybe separately, maybe combined on these tracks. They are fantastic. Advanced Buster Hawk, Glay Lancer, or Gray Lancer.
yummy.
Yeah, I couldn't have chosen two more disparate songs.
They almost don't sound like they were made by the same chip.
No, definitely.
That's an interesting thing for me to come across too because I didn't know Iwadare was involved in this because he was maybe a heavy on game arts composer, right?
That's right, yeah.
Leader of the Silver Star, yeah, he composed those songs. But you can hear, you see the Sega PSG,
Yes.
like the main melody.
That's that kind of staccato, like clanking. Yeah.
You know, I don't think it gets enough credit for the sampling because I think a lot of Genesis games have really great drum samples in there. Maybe not so much this one, but the NBA Live one I thought was pretty good.
Pretty good, right? Yeah.
The drums, yeah.
You know, it's not like they were sampling loops instead of just the original hits. Yeah.
Right, definitely, again, heavily focused on melody and not so much on rhythm on this one. Although, definitely rhythmic.
Yeah, well, NBA Live was definitely a rhythm-focused track, and this is definitely a melody-focused track.
Yeah, exactly. They were thinking like, ooh, basketball, rap music. So kind of stuck together, right?
That makes you kind of go about wondering, thinking about these two tracks that just played in addition to your experience with other music tracks. What would you say is your preference thus far? Would you go more with a harmony or a melody?
I'm all about the groove and the harmony, always. So that would be always my thing.
For me, it's the harmony, the melody, and the hook.
Yeah.
Like I love a verse chorus sort of setup with a hook in the chorus.
I like a lot of pitch bends. As long as they pitch bend, it sounds like someone's like playing a saxophone out of the Genesis.
All right, you guys ready for another quiz?
We got one more quiz here.
All right.
Banana Man.
He's returned.
Maracas.
One of the guest stars at our panel last year.
Don't sleep on that man's flow. He's got it in spades.
All right, okay.
Quiz time.
I'm looking for. All right, this is for the Sega Genesis, which does not work. Just letting you know. Don't
But it
plug
is
it in.
signed by the Angry Video
I
Game
cannot
Nerd.
be responsible for what happens if you plug that into a power source. We're looking for 3 other Western composers who worked on the Sega Genesis. 3 others. Okay, you sir.
Tommy Tallarico.
Tommy Tallarico is one. Cool spot. You got 2 others? Any more? Any more?
One was a guest on Pixel Tunes Radio.
I think this is a tough question in general,
He composed what, Pugsy, and what, Alien
Alien 3.
on the Genesis.
though. Give him a letter.
Liz and Wiz, or Wiz and Liz.
First letter.
First name rhymes with bat.
Another one would be Just for Kid.
Yes,
That's for Kid,
good one.
absolutely.
Good one.
And the other one also worked on the NES. That's all right. That's all right. We can keep going.
All right, you get to stick. Anyone else can name one more Western Genesis composer? Oh man, I think we've stumped them.
But that's okay. That's okay. I will say one more would be Banana.
Did you already say Michael Jackson and/or whoever took over for Sonic 3?
Fair
Sonic 3
The
soundtrack.
Sonic 3 soundtrack.
Yeah, absolutely.
Had some Western composers. Yes. Well, I guess we'll allow that
We'll
one.
allow that one. All right, we got some more stickers for that one. We're gonna have one more question after this to give away the Genesis because I think that was a little rough, maybe, right?
Yeah, and I think they need to actually answer everything to earn the Genesis.
All right, let's move on to our next system then, right? Are we good
Next
with that?
chip.
We're moving along too fast.
No, I'm just grooving along with where we're going. I'm calm.
I had like 4 cups of coffee and I'm feeling pretty good.
I want to throw Matt Furness and David Wise out there.
Yes, Matt Furness was who I was thinking of, and David Wise, of course. Battletoads, Donkey Kong Country. He's
David Wise
worked
was
on
the name I had in mind the
Genesis
whole
as well.
time.
He did he do the Genesis Battletoads?
It's the same soundtrack.
Yeah, so
Whether
I
he
assume-
actually programmed it.
Adapted
can't
from his
say.
work.
And I will just add, in a sense, too, for everyone who was kind of like stumped on these composers, don't feel bad. Prior to getting into this whole podcasting scene, I was the same way. You start to learn a lot about composers when you listen to people talk about them frequently
Right.
or bringing them up. So
It's
that's
true,
what
I
we're
can
going to pick up
attest to
on.
that.
We'd love to
Listening you
educate.
guys for a few years.
All right, so next up we have a lot of people's favorite sound chip, the Super Nintendo SSMP. You want to take it?
Yeah, sure. So the Super Nintendo was designed for sample playback. There's no pure FM synthesis or just wave generation. It was only short sampled instruments played across a chromatic scale. It had independent stereo channels, which the NES did not have. It was all seriously mono. It had envelope control over each of the sounds, so it could fade in, it could fade out. They could use it on echoing. They could filter it. So you can do. It was really up to the composers and the technicians who worked on the music, like how complicated they want some of this music to be.
Yeah, and on 256 different individual stereo panning channels too, so you can get a full complete sweep from left channel to right channel.
And a lot of people grew up with this system, so a lot of this music is very, very dear to them and very, very personal to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good stuff. I feel like when you start pitching sampled instruments around, you start to lose some of the pure notes and keys out of it, so it sounds a little off key, but it's kind of endearing too. But we're going to hear some examples of that.
Yeah, and one fun fact, the chip was designed by Sony's Ken Kutaragi, who also was responsible for developing much of the architecture of the Sony PlayStation. So whenever you're listening to some SNES music, you're listening to the guy behind the PlayStation's tech genius at work.
Very cool.
Essentially. All right,
That's
so
news to me, actually.
first track is one of Cam's picks, and a huge, amazing soundtrack. Pluck from Tim and Jeff Fallen. This is the beach theme. I know we had a Silver Surfer fan in the audience, so this is the same composer.
Not quite. More of that.
This is a masterwork.
It really is. That tone and that bass instrument, whatever that is.
And getting the bass out of the Super Nintendo is impressive. This is the track game itself.
Yeah, this is the purity and the clarity of the samples of this soundtrack. It's amazing. And this is the Genesis song, basically. Like Peter Gabriel era Genesis. Until you get to the disco part in the middle.
There's a disco part.
Oh, not really, sort of.
Hard to believe it's the same sound chip that brought you Super Mario World.
is that awesome little title track. I love that track so much, and I listen to it regularly.
Little brass.
Yeah, brass is excellent. I love like how just off the grid it is. This just sounds so real. It's like, I don't want this to sound like a game. I want it to sound like a band.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like it definitely captures the atmosphere that it's trying to convey game-wise too. Just listening to it.
Dig the guitar.
Here it goes.
Oh!
Oh yeah. We gotta listen to all
Kidding me?
this too.
That's the best.
You did well, sir. You did very well.
Listen to the bends. It's the exact. You get the behavior of a string as you're bending a string. Like,
I love that.
and what I think is really interesting about this is coming from Tim Collins himself. He created the samples and Jeff composed the soundtrack. That's what he said during one of those.
Yeah, what happened was Jeff composed most of it, and then they needed some. It's not very good. I'll let it go.
Oh, that's amazing. He's like, I know it's a Super Nintendo game, but come on. He's just indulging in that. I love it.
Yeah, so Jeff Fallon composed most of it. Tim Fallon was his brother, and so
Still is.
Jeff moved on to other projects, and they needed some more music for the game because they expanded some levels. And so Tim came in and wrote a few of the other tracks for it. And I think this was an actual Tim Fallon track, if I'm not mistaken.
You said it's the best track in the game.
It's
The
also,
whole soundtrack.
the whole soundtrack is
There's a lot of
stellar.
there's a lot of
variety on it. Right, now we're going on to, I think, one of my favorites on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, this is a nice little groovy jam. This is Natural Cavern from Brainlord, also picked by Cam, from Masano Akahori. Let's give her a listen. You're going to hear a very different tone from this one.
That's not
I'm cool with listening to it again. Let's just keep going. Back to the beach.
Much more video gamey.
That's slap bass.
It's still a video game. What makes it video gamey? I don't know.
I'm actually getting to that point where I'm starting to feel like the Western
I think it's
composers are more about grooves.
Yeah, as far as Japanese composers go, there's a lot of focus on like non-standard time signatures. The slap bass definitely either between both the Genesis and the Super Nintendo in the 60-bit era, the slap bass was huge and not so many popular music. So
I think a lot of kids at the time in Japan were picking up the slap bass as part of like their school programs, right?
I don't know, after school slap bass club.
Yeah. The slap bass gang.
I also love the drums. The play on the hats and snare.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, you're the person who got pretty much this entire panel into the concept of this entire OST.
I believe so. Yeah.
All right, you want to move on to the quiz?
Yeah, we got a couple more questions, so we're gonna finish with the quiz there.
All right, let's turn this volume down so everybody can hear you.
All right, we're gonna go back to the NES. Can someone tell me the 5 sound channels of the Nintendo audio processing unit? The 5 different sound channels. I saw the guy in the blue. Man in blue.
2 square, 1 triangle, I believe it's a linear feedback shift register for the noise,
Wow, it's very specific.
a delta modulation chip.
That's correct. Thank you.
And a microphone. And a microphone.
On the Japanese only.
2 square channels and a microphone.
Very good. Yeah, that is exactly what we were looking for. Thank you so much. You win the Sega Genesis. So thank you.
Nice.
I
Give
know
him a
it's
hand.
eligible, I have to check.
Very nice job.
All right, thank you so much.
All right, so we're going to move on to our last one, right?
Yeah, we're gonna move on to our last system. We might have some
My
fun.
favorite on the panel, by the way, just to point that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's right. Pernell grew up with the TurboGrafx 16/PC Engine, if you're nasty. So I'll take this one, I guess.
Absolutely.
So the sound chip was also the main processor of the system. It's called the HU C6280 chip, and it had 6 PSG sound channels, and most of them were programmable by the composer, so they can kind of make it sound any way they want: triangle wave, square wave, sawtooth.
Yeah, it was selectable per a few of those channels, right?
Right, so the first 2 channels had waveform playback and frequency modulation. The second 2 channels were only for waveform playback. And then channels 4 and 5, the last two channels, can do white noise or waveform playback. And they can combine these channels in different ways. They can combine two channels to get sample playback. The frequency modulation would allow the composer to like dynamically change the sound. We can have one channel modify the other channel.
Right.
It was it sounds like an NES sound chip on steroids, basically, because they're using that PSG stuff. But then
It's really, really unique to itself.
yeah,
honestly,
yeah, it's very discernible as a specific chip. So I picked. The thing about the TurboGrafx 16 and PC Engine is that it was mainly a Japanese system. It sold like hotcakes in Japan, but sold very poorly in Western countries. So we didn't get a lot of Western-developed games for the TurboGrafx. And so there's only a couple of games out there that had Western composers, so I was kind of limited as to what I could choose from. So I found this really cool theme called Mission Briefing from the game Falcon, composed by Paul Mogg, one of the only Western-developed games out there.
I was really impressed you found one, to be honest.
Yeah, it was this one, and I think there was Impossible, which was composed by Barry Leach, but it was basically a conversion of his Commodore 64 theme. So I don't really want to count it. This is at least an original composition for the TurboGrafx.
So not even adapted from any other system.
And as far as I know, correct.
Interesting.
Yeah. So let's take a listen to Mission Briefing from Falcon. Pretty simple tune.
Ed, this is your mission. If you choose to accept it.
Gonna march right down to the food court.
Wild man chicken
Get myself
fingers.
a BLT wrap.
The man chicken fingers. I don't know how they don't have chicken fingers down there. It hurts.
But you can tell it's very, very simple. It sounds like a very early NES game or something like that.
Sounds like an early PC title.
I do like the harmonics that come in that kind of keep layering on sounds as the song goes through.
It has a very medieval feel to it, or something.
Yeah. Militaristic.
Medieval warplanes.
Made of stone and
They
wood.
would just put people in catapults and just toss them in the air, and that's your Air Force.
And that's pretty much it. Not too much to share. I kind of threw it in because I needed something that kind of filled out the space.
Not much of a
It's
groove
decent
there.
tune, but
You can just listen to more PC Engine music.
so let's listen to some PC Engine music, and this is.
Prepare yourself.
Yeah, this is one of the best, in my opinion, TurboGrafx PC Engine songs ever written. This is the gameplay theme from Devil's Crush, composed by Toshiaki Sakota.
Okay, all right.
Well known by a lot of people. Let's jam out to this one.
I'm gonna turn that up a little bit.
You can't even tell they're the same shit compared to.
This is the kind of sound that had me grooving on the TurboGrafx stage for years. Past and present, technically. I think I saw this game selling in the dealer's room too.
$80 complete box downstairs. You can this game.
I feel like I should like this track more than I do. I really just. I hate to be a kind of contrarian, but I'm just not feeling it. I like the composition. The sound really doesn't quite. Some of the channels are a little too loud.
They're going real loud. That's what they want. It's demon pinball. I mean, gotta have that. Like I will say, this is like the first, like this music and the aesthetic, the combination made video pinball playable. Like, I think this does a good job of bringing you into it. Like it's composed extremely well.
Right.
There's a lot of change-ups,
Those
right?
programmable channels really lend a very large amount of texture to each of those same channels. You don't have to worry about arms or anything like that. You know, they can create a very rich sound all on its own.
That shred though, man, you gotta give that. That's insane.
Some of those solos are absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and then we get into this Castlevania business. I mean, this is a demon situation. I mean, pinball demon.
It's a demon pinball situation.
Demon pinball machine.
All right, do we have any more quiz questions? Or
I
are you tapped
have
out?
one more quiz for the panel.
For the panel?
For the panel.
Quiz question for the panel.
Okay.
I don't know. I can only find one answer to this. There could be multiple ones. Okay, what game had a Western composer on one 16-bit system, but had a Japanese composer on the adaptation of the other system?
I got one.
Yes.
Alien 3.
Alien 3.
Steve Collette was the Super Nintendo, and then Matt Furnace was Genesis. Oh, damn it.
and you can have mine, 'cause I have
I didn't
no
know
idea
Steve
what.
Kahlo was Japanese.
I thought I had something there.
I only found one. I did search for a little while.
This is a good question. You're talking 16-bit only.
Yes, Sega Genesis, Super Nintendo. A lot of these games were adapted from one to the other, but
Western on one, Japanese on the
usually
other.
an adaptation of the music from one system to the other.
All right. Well, before you go any further, does anybody out there know?
Does it have to be the same game?
Yeah, I'm looking for
Yeah.
the same game. Like
That's what makes it so hard.
That doesn't count then.
You know what? That was my only one. It was Aladdin.
Oh, wow, nice one.
Which was like, I was like,
Knew that?
this guy's good, man.
You should get 2 Genesis. You should get Genocide.
Genesis.
We'll have to go track down the Angry Video Game Nerd and get another Genesis sign just to get this.
Just for him. Up there, look.
Any other questions for us?
That was it. That was everything I wrote
All right.
down, and then I went back to bed.
We've got a little bit of time. Does anybody have any questions for us? Questions either that trivia questions you want to stump us with, or maybe questions you want answered, things you might be curious about the different sound chips from different systems.
Musically, gamey, it don't matter.
Well, let's go with on that. What for you? What do you believe is your favorite sound? Like, I'm not saying what the best is. I'm saying what for you is the best.
So when I grew up, I was a Nintendo kid. And
Yeah.
I was always under the impression that the Super Nintendo sound chip would blow away the Genesis sound chip, hands down, every single time. As I got older, I started doing the podcasts and started, creating or converting soundtracks to MP3, off the computer. I came to recognize that a lot of these FM soundtracks, like Glaylancer that you just played, I really like them better than the Super Nintendo stuff. And it started to kind of snowball, and then the Sharp X68000, the PC-98, all these other Japanese computer systems that also used FM sound chips, I really kind of started fawning over too. So of all of them, I would say that the Genesis has my favorite sound chip of the 4 that we've just talked about. And that's probably only been within like the last 5 years or so that I've really come to appreciate it that much.
That's good.
What about you?
So exposure to it has helped you
Exactly.
appreciate it more.
Exactly.
I love 80s and 90s cheesy pop music like to death. So for me, it's the Sega Genesis, and really anything with the FM chips in it. So like the PC-88, PC-98 stuff that I'm now discovering on these Japanese computer systems. I love the cheesy sound of it. Even if it's like done really well, but then like the sound isn't super great, it just makes me love it that much
When
more.
FM chips try to recreate a brass horn, it just sounds super cheesy.
You're thinking like a Miami Sound Machine. But
Something, exactly.
Once
What about you, Pernell?
Well, it's a tough call. I feel like I might be the outlier on this panel, but though I am a big fan of doing much with very little, I feel as though the TurboGrafx stepping into the PC Engine CDs hardware with Red Book Audio was a moment in gaming music that has yet to be replicated or even touched. Because it's almost like someone said, hey, you were limited to this now, but you can just dump darn near whatever you want into these games. And people's like, wait, I can do all these things I can do now. So I was like rocking guitar harmonies on games that didn't even need it. You had stuff that just makes you feel powerful like when you're playing the games. In a way to which like I listen to them to this day. Like EZO ST is a prime example of that, where the original versions on like the Sega Master System and the like were chippy. They were composed by Yuzo Koshiro back then. But then, I can't remember the full name, but like Ryo Unimitsu or something like that. I can't remember his name.
Unimitsu.
It was, nice. He did the compositions for the Turbo CD variants. And just the shift from like, we did a lot with very little to, we did a lot with a lot. It's like night and day. Both are equally able to be appreciated, but there's just something to be said about this majesty that's happening over here. I recommend wholeheartedly, if you've never even played Turbo CD stuff or never had exposure to it, go for the music anyway, because you will appreciate it something fierce.
Right.
No doubt.
Stuff like Lords of Thunder, if you're into rock or metal, Lords of Thunder is a fantastic CD.
So Cameron, what's on your turntable?
Well, 5 years ago I would have said NES, hands down, and now I would still say NES with just a better understanding, a broader understanding of it, because now I have a better sense of like the differences between East and West and the different composing styles and how the channels are used, and so now when I listen to that chip in particular, I hear all those things and I hear how all the notes are being manipulated, and it makes me think listen to it in a way that I hadn't before. And overall, I just love that super chippy sound. Just sucks me in every time.
For sure, for sure. All right, guys, so that about wraps up our panel. I've just got one more slide on here. This is all of our information as far as where you can find us on the web. I'll leave it up as we kind of wrap up. If you guys want to take a picture of it or whatever, find us. Do you guys want to talk a little bit about where you can be found?
Yeah, so you can find us in Wilmington, Delaware. We're hanging out at the Moe's Santa Fe, eating burritos.
Actually, we're joking, but actually, I love me some Moe's. That rock and roll sauce is beast.
Every Monday we release a podcast of video game music, and it's every week. And we pick a topic that we're both just used to explore this world of compositions.
And it's a beautiful concept because originally it was kind of started with like almost like a jokey concept, like let's take this topic. But what ended up happening was we would end up with these topics that neither of us had any familiarity with, but then we'll just deep dive and come up with these tracks that we probably would have never picked otherwise, but deserve total attention.
Right. So you're going to hear like really clear, crisp audio quality of the music, and then a little bit of the background on the composers and on all that other stuff too. So it's rhythmandpixels.com, and you can find us on everywhere where you can find podcast stuff.
In addition to that, we'll occasionally kind of have like nice, awesome like game chatter as well. So
Sure.
it ends up being a matter of the technology and the sound, and also the experience that you get when you're experiencing the sound with the product it's composed for. It ends up making for a nice musical salad of game and gaming garnish, music with a gaming garnish. I'll go with that. And it's just a quality time. We look forward to having you all take a listen and chat with us in the Facebook groups and stuff, and just have a nice commiseration of musical gaming talk.
It's a big welcoming community. Everyone is really enthusiastic about video game music. Everyone is involved. It's great.
Absolutely. And of course, you can find the VGMbassy at thevgembassy.com. We also both have Facebook groups. So there's facebook.com/group/rhythmandpixelschat and facebook.com/group/thevgembassy. And you can join the communities there. They're very active communities. Video game composers hang out there. Fans of video game music, we hang out there. So you can talk about video games, share your favorite video games, YouTube links, or however you want to share your favorite video game music, and
every month
discuss it with people.
Every month we play a new retro game, and we sort of like talk about it and like about our progress, and everyone gets in on the chat, and we have a good time.
Yeah. And as far as VGMbassy goes, I release a show every other Friday, but they're longer shows, so you get like 2 hours every other week from me, and you'll get about an hour every week from you guys.
And they are
depending on the
excellent.
guest.
They're so good.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I have
They're
a
both
different.
excellent.
So it's me primarily, and then a different guest every single episode. So every show is a surprise. I'll go on deep dives for like one particular game, or sometimes I'll just have a guest on that's a composer and like their favorite style of music or their favorite genre of game and some music from that. So every episode's a little bit of a surprise. You can kind of pick and choose which themes appeal to you, or go through and listen to all of them. We have a lot of fun, and I think. I mean, I've been listening to Rhythm and Pixel since you guys started off, and it's a fantastic show. So definitely check these guys out.
Here.
Again, any questions before we wrap up?
Do you think the Gems composition system used for the Genesis resulted in a lot of Western composers having like similar sounding music?
I think so. I think for some of them, when you're given probably you're given a short amount of time or a specific amount of time to complete music for a specific game, and you're given the tools already right in front of you, you're going to gravitate to use those tools as quickly as possible.
Yeah, and Gems was a very simple sound driver at that, so it didn't give the composers a lot of leeway.
I don't know what GEMS, the acronym stood for, but it's essentially like a series of instruments used on the Sega Genesis, rather than a composer going in there and creating all of their own sounds themselves.
Right.
And yeah, FM synthesis is not as simple as just dialing in a square wave and going for it.
So it was basically just like a very accessible driver.
Yes.
Yeah, I think it just stood for Genesis Music System or something like that, GEMS. We had a question in the back?
Yeah, how do you find, I'm always looking for like new old gems. Do you go through game by game, or is there certain websites that you?
There are, yeah. So where do we go and look for these hidden gems? Like where do you go for it, Ed?
Well, for one, in talking about these Facebook groups, they've grown to be so active now that people are always sharing kind of gems that they've discovered with us, and we'll use a lot of those on the show.
Camera over here.
YouTube is a great resource too. You can really type in like, best 100 Sega Genesis jams or hidden Sega Genesis jams, and you'll get playlists and playlists of really awesome music. There's a website that I go to, it's called the Josh W Collection, and it's usually like, if you type in like vgm.joshw.info, it's basically like a team of people who rip music from video games and just post them up on this like FTP style website. And literally every single game is available from almost every single chip-based system. And so I go through those a lot. Sometimes I'll just say, over the course of the week, I'm going to listen to all the games that begin with B, and just download them and listen to them, and I'll kind of pick out what I want. It's very easy to get like a lot of games at once like that to kind of listen through them.
Yeah, for our show, we end up picking a topic that like kind of forces us into a certain direction, and we're like, okay, we need to find something that's related to pizza, and we'll try to find pizza music.
So like keyword search.
Yeah, but then it gets a little bit more like deep diving in that regard, because it starts as a deep dive with the topic. But then let's say you find like, oh, the topic is, I don't know, just easy one, horror games, right? So you go looking for these horror games, you come across one that you might not have been too familiar with, you listen to it, this track is awesome. Who wrote it? Because we're going to talk about the composer, and then once you learn the composer's name, deep dive that specific composer, and then you'll start learning about games you didn't even know existed.
Get down the rabbit hole.
Guy just he just needed to pay the bills, so he got this game, this contract for a game on the PC effects.
A lot of time.
And you know what? Listen to our shows. We'll do the work for you if you want to find some hidden gems, because we're doing the hard work and digging them up. So, and then you can find out, we'll tell you something about the composer, at least tell you who the composer is, and that way you can research that composer on your own and find other music that you like from a person that wrote a song that you already enjoy, so you'll find more stuff in that same kind of vein.
That's a great way to find music, is finding a composer of a game that you've liked and seeing what else they worked on other systems.
I do it all the time. I hear one track, I'm like, that track's amazing. You find the composer, you dive into the composer, and you find just a gold mine.
First thing that ever blew my mind was the same guy that wrote Donkey Kong Country also wrote Battletoads. I was like, and that put me down the rabbit hole, and I don't think I've ever dug my way back out again. That was like 10 years ago, so.
And I can say that one thing that worked, at least for me, and it may even work for you, is that I just had a generally wide history of gaming growing up. And I have an odd memory of like things that touched me as a kid, teenager, adult.
It's all that head spinning.
Yes, all that head, man, this pea soup. But as you start to look more into it, and then you get retroactive on the tracks you've always liked, that is also a really good starting point to say, I liked this, I need more of that. And then this helps you deep dive as well. It's a perfect way to go, to get started.
All right, guys, I think that is about...
We got one more question.
Oh, no more time.
No more time? No, we got time, come on.
What do you think of the difference between music made for commercial games versus that of like the demo scene?
Ed.
I'm uniquely qualified to answer this one. I also do another demo scene podcast called The Impulse Project, where we share, demo scene music and do kind of the same thing, talk about the composers and their history. Demo scene music is all about showing off, I think, as far as kind of maximizing the potential of each sound chip, kind of regardless to how it's going to affect the video game that it's, or it wouldn't even be in a video game. So it's music for the sake of music.
Not composing for that medium, it's just trying to be as rad as possible for like 3 minutes.
Would you also say that demo scene technically, is predominantly more of a Western sort of sound for the most part?
Not necessarily, because there are music discs in Japan for like the Sharp X68000 PC98, where it's essentially Japan's version of the demo scene. And you would get literal floppy disks, at conventions or whatever, put them in your Japanese computer and be able to play the music.
But thanks to, piracy here in the States, we get exposed to a lot of the demo scene music through the key gens and the music that plays in the background. You're like, wow, where's that tune come from?
Yeah.
But it's like some dude in like Norway just like kicking out the jams on his NES.
Plus, composers for video games have to keep channels open for sound effects. So on a 6-channel FM sound chip like the YM2612 in the Genesis, you might only be using 3 or 4 channels because you need those extra channels for sound effects. A demo scene composer comes along, like Dread or Dyer, some of the composers I've had on my show, they can use all 6, they can use anything they want, so you're gonna hear music that's much more full and rich.
And I think you guys might have touched on it already, but there's something to be said about the idea that when you compose for a game, though not always the case, a lot of times they'll outright tell you, when you make this music, it needs to have this kind of style to it. It has to have this kind of, give you this impression when you hear it. So while that can result in some high quality product, in the end, you're still being pigeonholed, your creativity is slightly getting pigeonholed and restricted to this particular area, whereas demo's like, I just want the sound. Yeah.
Exactly. Plus, they're using more modern tools, so they have a little bit more of that. You're not using gems; they're using, VGM Player or Deflamask or another set of tools that's much, much more advanced than what the composers of earlier VGM had access to.
It's also more user-friendly.
Yeah. All right, guys, we are now over time, so we want to thank you so much for coming out and sharing this awesome video game music with us.
Hold on to your chairs. You get an NES. You get an NES. You get an NES.
You don't actually get an NES.
Please check out our podcasts on the VGM podcast stream. You will see this show and another show that Rob and Pernell and I did together, focusing on Hideki Naganuma, an awesome Sega composer with some rad jams. So we'll be putting that out soon.
Yeah, I'm
as
excited
well.
about that. Yeah, Jet Set Radio.
Thank you. Have a great rest of your con.
Have a good time, folks.